Michael Patrick Shields is on the air.
Good morning, world.
Good morning, Michigan. A very pleasant Monday to you. Michael Patrick Shields with questions this morning that maybe we can get answered. Are the Michigan State Spartans getting ripped off after that great season? Only one loss. Sure, they're in the BCS top 10, number 8, in fact. But it looks like a trip back to Orlando to the Capital One Bowl. Capital One Bowl in Orlando is the same stadium they played the Champs Sports Bowl in a couple of years ago. You know, we had dreams of Pasadena and roses, didn't we, in the Rose Bowl? And when you look at it, when you've got Wisconsin, Ohio State, and Michigan State, Wisconsin's probably going to the Rose Bowl, and Michigan State beat Wisconsin. So how come we're getting left out of the big dance? How come the Spartans aren't going to a BCS Bowl? It sure looks that way. Anyway, but the only consolation that I can see in the whole thing is if the Spartans go to the Capital One Bowl in Orlando, there's a chance they could play Alabama and Nick Saban. Mark D'Antonio versus Nick Saban. The Spartans versus their old coach in Orlando. Who wouldn't watch that? But it's not settled yet, but we're going to talk about that this morning. It is 888-900-9966 is our number if you're want to talk about the Spartans. 888-900-9966. We're going to talk to plenty of experts along the way, including Tim Stout, the sportscaster extraordinaire, and Rich Kincaid will be here too, the sportscaster. Larry Adderley, who was a Spartan all those years ago and has been on television since. And Ken Dalafor will be here, too, as we talk football this morning. The other question, is Rich Rodriguez going to get blown out after the Wolverines got blown out by Ohio State, 37-7? And I have a feeling if you watch that game, the Buckeyes took it easy on them in the fourth quarter, if you know what I mean. David Brandon is saying that he's not going to change his regularly scheduled checkup of the Michigan football program. Rich Rodriguez says the worst is behind us. I know it. It takes a little while to mold this team the way you want to mold it. I'm not deterred one bit. He does say, though, that it's frustrating as heck. So the question is, should Rich Rodriguez be let go? Stanford had a very excellent year, and Jim Harbaugh, who used to play quarterback for the Wolverines and grew up on that Michigan football field when his father was a coach for Bo Schembechler, seems to be in line for the job if he wants it. And there's also some rumor that in his contract at Stanford, he has one out, and that is for the Wolverines. So will he be coming to Michigan? 888-900-9966. Do you want Jim Harbaugh, or do you want to stay with Rich Rodriguez? I'd like to know what you think about that. Is the United States going to war with North Korea? We're going to talk with Professor Raymond Tanter a little bit later. He was on President Reagan's National Security Council and is a foreign policy expert. And there continue to be war games going on with the South Koreans and America and the North Koreans there in the Yellow Sea. So we're going to talk about that, too, with Raymond Tanter. Speaking of North Korea, did you hear what Sarah Palin said in a radio interview? Now, it looks like she's going to run for president, the former governor of Alaska, who served a partial term as governor of Alaska. Here's what she said in a radio interview.
Obviously, got to stand with our North Korean allies. We're bound to by treaty.
South
we're
Korean.
Also bound by, and we're also bound by prudence to stand with our South Korean allies. Yes, and to remind North Korea, well, we're not going to reward bad behavior, and we're not going to walk away.
So that little comment there, we have to stand by our North Korean allies, which the television interviewer corrected her to say South Korea. Was that a slip of the tongue, or does it show that maybe she doesn't have a full grasp of what's going on? Now, Sarah Palin says, hey, people make mistakes all the time, slips of the tongue, but when she makes them, everybody pounces. So does that slip of the tongue worry you about Sarah Palin, or is it just simply that, a slip of the tongue? 888-900-9966 is our number. You can also send email to mpsbigshow@aol.com. We talked about football a little bit earlier, and we're going to talk with Ken Dalafor shortly. Apparently, the Lions were made fun of on The Simpsons, if you watch that long-running television cartoon, and here's what that sounded like.
Hey, Homer, you ever think about racing that bird?
You can race pigeons?
Hey, if it moves, you can bet on it.
What about the Detroit Lions?
Nah, lay off Detroit. Them people is living in Mad Max times.
Hey, he made fun of Detroit and the Lions all in one swoop. Ken Dalafor will be with us later. We'll talk about whether maybe Jim Schwartz is, a lot of other cities would have fired him by now. Should we get rid of Jim Schwartz and get on to the next coach? And should it be somebody with winning experience like Bill Parcells maybe, or Tony Dungy? Or what about Bill Cowler? Could he be lured out of retirement? What about the guy that just got the Ziggy there in Minnesota? By Ziggy, in fact. Or do we stay with Jim Schwartz? I mean, they all say it's not the same old Lions. They're showing signs of promise. They're turning it around. How long can we wait, though? And they're going to have another good draft pick this year. So maybe Jim Schwartz, no offense, was a transitional coach, just to sort of stabilize the team some. And maybe it takes the next guy to figure out how to win with what he's got. We'll see. And how soon till we start talking about a woman head coach in the NFL? That would be interesting, too. Sooner or later, that's going to come up. Are we 30 days away from a tax increase? That's another big question we have right now. If the Bush tax cuts aren't extended by the end of January, by the end of December, that is, in the lame duck federal session, you're going to get a tax increase. Simple as that. We're going to talk about the lame duck session and what can or cannot be accomplished. Speaking of that, in Michigan, our lame duck session apparently is going to be especially lame. Why do I say that? Well, there are only a few days left, and the Senate Majority Leader, Mike Bishop, plans limited action in the Senate. He's going to close shop Thursday, and that'll be that, and leave the leftovers to Governor-elect Rick Snyder and a GOP-controlled House and Senate. So there's some pressure for unfinished business, like funding for the Pure Michigan tourism ad campaign, and that bridge, maybe a new bridge from Canada to Canada from Detroit over the Detroit River. And Brian Calley has a couple things he wants to take care of, too, and insurance companies have to cover treatment of autism. But the chambers are going to meet Tuesday through Thursday, but that's about it. And Matt Marsden, who's the spokesman for Mike Bishop, says, quote, "There's not a lot of good that can come out of lame duck." And there you have it. Andy Dillon, though, the Speaker of the House, the Democrat from Redford and the state's new state treasurer, says he wished the legislature would stay a little longer. He wants to drum up support for a ballot issue to change term limits for legislators so they can stick around a little longer than they can now. He wants to have lawmakers able to serve a maximum of 12 years in either the House or the Senate combined. Current law allows a maximum of 6 years in the House and 8 years in the Senate. Now, today is Cyber Monday. What does that mean? Well, Black Friday was the big shopping day when everybody had all the sales. They get up at 4 in the morning and stand in line and scream and yell because they got a TV for $10 less than they normally would. And apparently the numbers were good, and Gary Austin's going to tell us about that in a minute. But today's the day that they know everybody's back to work because a lot of people were off Friday. So the online retailers get their shot now, and they're offering all sorts of specials online. The question is, while we hear 30% of people or more are going to shop online at work today, at work, can you be fired for shopping online using a company computer for personal business? Because we know in most cases the boss can see what you're doing on the company computer. Can you be fired for shopping online today on this Cyber Monday? Gary Austin's going to have some shopping stats for us right now. He's our news anchor. And by the way, Gary...
I'm troubled.
What?
You mean the boss can see what we're doing on our computer?
Certainly.
Now you tell me.
Anytime. Yeah, so be careful and depending where you're shopping today.
It's true. Watch out.
I had to be careful on the drive in this morning. Do you know I had a police escort most of my way into work this morning?
You didn't. Why?
Yeah.
Why?
And you might say, oh, he's a big shot. He needs a police escort. That wasn't it.
No?
I had a friendly state trooper on Saginaw Highway for miles and miles and miles, just kind of cruising along with me there. And, and when he got to the red light in front of me, he would wait when it turned green till I caught up, and he just wanted to see what I was doing up that early, I think, and whether I was speeding, and so I had to go particularly slow. It was like a pace lap at a race, like he and I didn't want to get my nose in front of him at all, but he kept slowing way down, and it would have been obvious if I didn't step on the gas and go the prescribed speed limit. You know what I mean?
A good reason to be on good behavior.
So that happened for miles. I mean, miles and miles, all the way to work. Police escort. Thank you to the Michigan State Police for that. I'll see you tomorrow morning. Travel and security. As you know, I was on some airplanes this weekend, Mr. Austin.
You were all, now, where'd you go? You were absent.
I went far away.
2 days.
I went far away. I went to the most remote island chain in the world. Let's put it that way.
An undisclosed
And I'm
location.
not talking about Beaver Island or Mackinac Island or Drummond Island. But I went through the security thing, the
did.
naked scanning thing.
And how'd that go?
It was fine. I had intended to get the pat down just to see what it was like, but I didn't feel like it when I got there. And I just wanted to get out of there, and so I
Yeah,
didn't want
how
to cause
were
a stir.
others? Were they okay with it too, or were people getting a little antsy?
There was nobody where I go through. There was nobody where I went through. I was the only one in line with the people I was with, and so I stood in the thing, and it went around, and it was no big deal. I don't understand what everybody's all upset about. I'd rather be safe, wouldn't you?
Oh, I think most would agree.
888-900-9966 is the number. Gary Austin, there is good news in the shopping world, is there?
There is retail traffic. Boy, it was fast and furious over the past several days, up 8.7% when compared to last year at this time. That is a result of the Thanksgiving weekend blitz. A National Retail Federation survey also finds 77% of shoppers this holiday season will buy at least one gift card as well. Merchants like that kind of news too.
Then you can get whatever you want.
Yeah, good idea.
What we're going to give you when we get back is some football talk and a look inside those WikiLeaks embarrassing cables between the U.S. government. It's a diplomatic crisis, and it's shocking. Stay tuned for that. It's Michael Patrick Shields. Back at it now on Monday morning, 22 minutes after the hour, heard all across the state of Michigan. And one of the potential lame duck issues in the state legislature is, can we get some funding for Pure Michigan? Now, we only got a couple of days of session left, and so there's a big push being put on right now to finally go ahead and get some money in the deal here, because we'd like to promote the ski season. We'd like to promote, the spring golf and the rest of the summer. So Ken Hayward, the Vice President of Sales and Marketing from Grand Hotel, and the General Manager Jim Bartlett of Nubs Knob Ski Area, and some others are going to be, along with Steve Yensich today, the President and CEO of the Michigan Lodging and Tourism Association, having a news conference at the Capitol, and they just want to draw attention to the fact that we've got to get this money going. And there's only a couple days of session left. And you see, once we get all these new senators and representatives, they're all going to have to be educated by the lobbyists in some cases, of course. But they're going to have to be educated, and it's going to take time. And so that time is ticking, and that means we can't promote the ski season. Now, you heard earlier that the Senate Majority Leader is saying there isn't going to be a lot of action. He's going to leave everything for the next bunch of legislators, but there's $25 million in additional advertising needed to keep the Pure Michigan campaign going. That money would be available from an expected $100 million surplus from the fiscal year that ended September 30th. The money would pay for advertising in other states for Michigan's winter, spring, and summer tourism industry. Without those funds, the Pure Michigan campaign goes down to $5.4 million a year, and that is not enough money to pay for the ad campaign of any significance, according to the Pure Michigan officials. Last week, I was with a guy who spent a lot of time in Michigan and is back in his home now in Hawaii, Scott Head, who is one of the managers there of Waikoloa Village Resort on the Big Island of Hawaii. Thanks for staying up late with us to be with us early this morning, Scott.
Oh, you bet. Good morning.
I guess the story is that now that you run Waikoloa Resort there, which is fantastic right on the Kohala coast, and you and I got to spend some time watching the sun go down, and I ought to let you know that I watched the Lions Thanksgiving Day game at 7:30 in the morning on the balcony of the Waikoloa Hilton, and I could look at the ocean out of one eye and the Detroit Lions out of the other. That's a pretty good way to do it.
Hey, nothing like having a cup of coffee early in the morning while there's some great pro football going on.
It was really neat. Let me ask you this, though. Here's the thing. When you and I stood on that balcony there at that fantastic restaurant, the KPC there at the Waikoloa Hilton, and watched the sun go down, we talked about the Pure Michigan campaign. And you, all the way in the Hawaiian Islands, were aware of that campaign. So you've seen the Pure Michigan commercials all the way there in Hawaii.
Well, you know, I've been a big fan of that campaign, and obviously spent 7 years in northern Michigan, so I understand how compelling, Michigan can be to visitors and travelers, particularly to tourism, and to see that possibly dry up would be devastating, I think.
Yeah, and one of the things that's interesting is when you were in northern Michigan at the Treetops Resort, I think at some point all of you kind of realized that a rising tide lifts all boats, and a concentrated effort to join together in promoting the region was probably useful as opposed to everybody sort of cowboying it on their own without any cohesive strategy. Is that fair to say?
Oh, absolutely. It's just like a shopping center, so to speak. The shopping center is most powerful when you bring all the various brands and stores together to create an overall mix that is more compelling. And, you have so many great stories to tell in Michigan, particularly in northern Michigan, that you really collectively need to promote and market them together.
It's funny when you talk about a shopping mall because if you drive along on the big island of Hawaii, if you leave the airport and turn left on the Kohala Coast, it's like a shopping mall of resorts. You get to Hualalai and then the Kona Village Resort and then your resort, Waikoloa and Mauna Loa and Mauna Kea, and they are all in a row right there. And not only do you have the concentration marketing effort now for the Kohala Coast, but you're geographically there's elbow room. Don't get me wrong. We're not talking about Naples, Florida here. We're talking about, a beautiful coast. And you have the concentration of being geographically close together, too, just like Treetops and Garland and Boyne and Shanty Creek. All those places were all pretty close together.
They do parallel one another, very similar. You take a left, as you say, at the airport there, at the Kona International Airport, and you drive, 20 miles up the coast. You've got 4 magnificent resort properties and it's not high density. It's very spread out.
Yeah.
And collectively, 7 golf courses, 7 hotels, and it is very similar to Michigan in that regard.
What do you think will happen with Treetops now? We've got Barry Owen, the guy who was running Garland, in there as the general manager, and it gets lots of national attention. It's got certainly quality golf. But they have a sort of a limited ski season there. People go for the extreme tubing and the skiing, and it seems like it's got all the components. You spent a good portion of your career there. What do you think is next?
Well, I think at the core of Treetops is golf, and I've always said that collectively, Treetops may have the best golf in America.
Yeah.
And Barry Owens, I think, is the right guy to come in. It's a very challenging economic period that we're faced with right now. Did some great things at Garland and understands that market very well, and I think he's going to do a terrific job.
Tiger Woods ever going to win again?
Absolutely. He may win this week at his own event.
Oh, that's right. The Target. He skipped that last year, as I recall, that Target World Challenge on the West Coast there.
Yeah, why didn't he make that event last year?
He was getting stitches or whatever the heck he was up to there. Anyway, congratulations on having such a fantastic life and a fantastic resort there, Waikoloa. So if anybody's going out to the big island of Hawaii, remember, we got a Michigan man there who spent 7 years at Treetops at Waikoloa, and he's happy to show you around and make sure you have a good time. And we'll keep in touch and an early Merry Christmas to you, sir.
You bet, Michael. By the way, you never did tell me about Harrison's near hole-in-one on the famed Mauna Kea number 3.
Oh, yeah, that's the one that you see on television all the time hitting over the water. He just got up there. He's 13 years old, took a swipe at the ball, and rolled right past the hole and stopped about 12 feet behind it. And I swear it was going in as I was watching it. And, of course, he makes a 3 on the hole, and I didn't finish the hole. I put 2 balls in the ocean that are probably halfway to Japan by now.
Okay. Well, that's great. It was great to spend some time with you, and I look forward to getting back to Michigan sometime soon.
You bet. We'll put the dog on for you if you come back for a visit. You know that. In the meantime, we'll send everybody out your way there to the Big Island.
Thanks, Michael. Take care.
Scott Head, who knows the value of marketing. So the lawmakers listening this morning, if you get a chance to have a serious look at that Pure Michigan funding, we would sure appreciate it. Ken Delathor, who played for the Lions, the Steelers, and Chargers, and Michigan Panthers, and the Minnesota Golden Gophers, is now with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan, and he has shown his face in the islands from time to time, as I understand. Good morning to you.
Hey, good morning, Michael Patrick, and welcome back, all tanned up.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I know that you played in, 7 Pro Bowls out there at Aloha Stadium, right?
In my dreams.
Well,
I did play in the Hula Bowl as a senior in college, which was a lot of fun, and boy, it's a great state to bounce around and be part of out there. It's fun.
Who was your coach for that Hula Bowl experience?
Earl Bruce, Ohio State head coach.
Yeah, was he a decent guy? Did you like him?
He was a decent guy, and we had Art Schleister, who turned out to be had a bit of a gambling problem, but Art was there, and a number of other people that it's kind of fun to be around them and be part of that.
Must have been fun. Now, speaking of Ohio State and Earl Bruce and Art Schleister and all the rest, Wolverines blown out 37-7 at Ohio State this weekend. Do you think that Rich Rodriguez's days are numbered?
Well, I don't know for certain. Just like everybody else, you can speculate. I would say that the Michigan program, if you're 0-6 your last 3 years against Michigan State and Ohio State, probably not a good sign for your future. But, there's consequence and complications of taking Rich Rod out. And I just don't know. Like I said, I can speculate like everybody else.
Well, if Jim Harbaugh is available, there are a lot of people who would like that, obviously, with his Michigan background. His father coached on Bo Schembechler's staff. He was a little kid running around the field there before he ended up quarterbacking the Wolverines. Wolverines are 7-5. They are bowl eligible for the first time in Rich Rodriguez's tenure. And he says the worst is behind us. It takes time to mold the program the way you want to mold it. Is he going through some of the same sort of growing pains maybe as Jim Schwartz at the Detroit Lions?
I think the two are uniquely different in the sense that Jim Schwartz was handed a perennial loser, draft picks that didn't pan out. He really started with what I'll say is a talent empty closet, if you will, and started over. Rich Rod was given a program that came off a big win, and I think it was the Orange Bowl with Lloyd Carr's last.
Yeah, they beat Florida in the Capital One Bowl.
So they're Michigan.
Yeah, they beat Florida, the mighty Florida, with Tim Tebow in the Capital One Bowl there in Orlando.
Yeah, so when you look at that, there's a huge difference, and then you have the recruiting advantages of taking a kid into the big house and selling them on the school and the program, and it just seems to me that it shouldn't take you 3 years to build it, but I know it's a different system he's trying to build around. So anyhow, I'm not buying it.
Speaking of coaches, the only good thing about the Spartans, it looks like they may be headed back to that Capital One Bowl game that we're talking about, which disappoints me and a lot of people, having a one-loss season and not going to a BCS Bowl game, not having a shot at the national championship, apparently. They're number 8 in the BCS rankings, the Spartans are. Ohio State ahead of them in Wisconsin. It looks like Wisconsin's going to go to the Rose Bowl, but the Spartans beat Wisconsin, so that doesn't really jive too well in my book, because head-to-head, the Spartans would have beaten them. Granted, they didn't play Ohio State, but the only saving grace is that it looks like if the Spartans go to the Capital One Bowl, they get to play Nick Saban's Alabama team. And wouldn't that be a sweet matchup?
That would be a nice matchup. And, Michigan State, they've just had a great season, and you wish that they would have gotten everything they deserved out of it, but it just sort of lines up the way it does. And but it could be a great matchup and a fun event, and I'm sure a lot of Spartan fans will travel south to watch him play, and that'll be rewarding in itself, too.
D'Antonio versus Saban. Mark it on your calendar for New Year's Day. You and I are going to watch that game together at a ski resort somewhere on New Year's Day. I promise you that.
I'm looking forward to that, Michael.
Ken Dallafor from Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan played for the Lions, the Steelers, the Chargers, the Panthers. Professor Raymond Tanter, our friend at Georgetown, is going to tell us what is going on in the Korean Peninsula, and we'll talk about the WikiLeaks, too. Wait till you hear some of the details that are coming out now in American foreign policy. I'm Michael Patrick Shields, back in 4 minutes. 20 minutes before the hour, Michael Patrick Shields, heard all across the state of Michigan. Glad to have you with us. Professor Raymond Tanter is a prolific author. He spent some time at the University of Michigan, and he is at Georgetown University. He is the author of President, Iran Policy Committee, and the author of Rogue Regimes, Terrorism and Proliferation, President Obama and Iraq Toward a Responsible Troop Drawdown, and he's always working on something new. It's Professor Raymond Tanter, and if you Google him up, you can get to all of those books, and he's with us on the air right now, so just turn up your radio. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Michael Patrick, and good morning, Michigan and surrounding areas.
Thank you very much. Would you keep Rich Rodriguez?
No.
Okay.
That's easy. I would bring Nick Saban back to Michigan.
Nick Saban at the Wolverines?
That would be something, wouldn't it?
Wow. Well, wouldn't
he would never leave Alabama. Don't worry.
I don't know. He says that, but he said that before, hasn't he?
Oh yes.
What about Jim Harbaugh? Would that suit you?
Well, Harbaugh, I know Jim Harbaugh, and what a family, huh? It would be like homecoming. But why would he leave Stanford? I've taught at Stanford, and the campus is something else. But Michigan is Michigan. I think he would come home if offered.
Well, that's the trick of it. A lot of people like to say that he grew up on Bo Schembechler's football field with his father on the staff, but don't forget he did also grow up in Palo Alto, so he's got home ties there too, doesn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. And he's the guy. He's come home America, come home Jim.
Yeah.
But where is the home? That's the issue.
Yeah, and don't forget, you can't go home again. That's what Thomas Wolfe said. I don't know.
Hey, that's very literary, isn't it?
Thank you very much. On to more serious matters. Can you tell us exactly what is happening in the Korean Peninsula, and should we be concerned that the United States may have to go to war?
Well, North Korea tends to go to the brink. It sort of invented the word brinkmanship, and then it backs down when it gets what it wants. It says, look, if you don't feed me to China, I will implode and infect the neighborhood with my body politic streaming across the Yalu River. It tells the South Koreans, if you don't provide me with economic benefits as well, I will start a crisis. And he tells the United States, if you don't speak with me and negotiate with me bilaterally and not just with this six-party contact group, I will go nuclear. In fact, I will add to my nuclear bomb treasure house, if you will. So North Korea is the land of no good options, of all bad options, and I think the administration is on track, and China as well, trying to restart the six-party talks and broaden the mandate of the six-party talks to include more than the nuclear file of North Korea, but to also include conventional force engagements.
So if North Korea is saying all that, what does everybody have to say to North Korea, and do they have to speak with one voice? And I'm speaking of China, the United States, South Korea, and the rest.
Well, speaking with one voice is crucial, and that's why the six-party talks is the venue for the conventional as well as the nuclear file of North Korea. And what do you say? You give in. You give in because the alternative is a war that could escalate that no one actually wants. I don't think North Korea wants a war. There's a succession crisis in North Korea now because the military is sort of so-so about Kim Jong-un, the son who's going to replace his ailing father, Kim Jong-il. And Kim Jong-un has one thing that I actually like. He likes Michael Jordan.
So are you saying we just kind of wait them out?
You wait them out and let them calm down. They're the crazy uncle in the attic, according to the South Koreans. But this time, this is the first time that there's been a targeting by North Korea of a civilian population in South Korea. And this is happening at a time in which the United States and South Korea are engaging in war games to deter the North. So this situation could spiral out of control, and all of a sudden we have another war in our hands, and then President Obama can get another Nobel Prize.
But Sarah Palin is saying now, she sort of simplifies it to say we cannot reward bad behavior, but you're saying to sort of pacify the North Koreans.
Well, Sarah Palin can't distinguish between North Korea and South Korea. She said, let us stand with our North Korean allies.
I heard that.
That was a gaffe.
But
that said, I think she has a point. We can't reward good behavior. But what is the alternative? The alternative is to allow the situation to spin out of control. So it's almost like you tell your son, don't do X, and your son walks in the water, and you say, don't do X, and then all of a sudden the son is almost about to drown, and then you say, I'll come and save you.
Oh. Huh. So it's a run-out-the-clock sort of game, see how the transition happens, and kick the can down the road just a bit.
Right, you kick the can down the road, and diplomacy is the magic of kicking cans down the road, except, here we go to WikiLeaks, except when the diplomatic discourse is chilled by unauthorized leaks like the 70,000 or so Afghan reports in July of 2010, and then the 400,000 reports in military, both of which were military reports.
Yeah, some of those are shocking.
Late October.
We're going to go through some of those line by line. Your latest book is?
President Obama and Iran.
President Obama and Iran by Professor Raymond Tanter, friend of Jim Harbaugh and friend of this program and friend of the Wolverines. He's at Georgetown. He was on President Reagan's National Security Council, and we wish you a happy holidays, and we'll talk again soon. I very much appreciate the valuable time. Michael Patrick Shields, sports is next. Wait till you hear what happened to the Pistons last night. Stay tuned. I'm here right now on radio stations all across the state of Michigan in Mount Pleasant, Petoskey, Traverse City, Hastings, Lansing, Saginaw, Manistee, Grand Rapids, Kalamazoo, Ludington, and Muskegon. It's great to have you with us here this morning. And the Pistons yesterday dropped a double overtime thriller to the New York Knicks, 125-116 at the Palace of Auburn Hills. Detroit goes to Orlando to take on the Magic Tuesday. The Red Wings were in action yesterday in downtown Detroit, and radio broadcaster Ken Cal was there.
Thanks, Michael Patrick. We hope you and your listening audience had a very happy Thanksgiving. Valtteri Filppula scored the game-winning goal early in the third period, lifting Detroit to a 4-2 victory over the Columbus Blue Jackets last night at Joe Louis Arena. The win was Detroit's 15th of the season and second straight over Columbus. Derek Brassard redirected a point shot behind Jimmy Howard with under a minute to play in the first period. That allowed the Blue Jackets to take a 1-0 lead. Detroit took the lead halfway through the second, though. Nick Kronwall and Darren Helm scored 14 seconds apart. It was 2-1 Red Wings after 40 minutes of play. Filppula scored 52 seconds into the third period, giving Detroit a 3-1 lead. The Red Wing penalty killers did the job in the final stanza as they killed off a full 2-minute 5-on-3 Columbus power play. Antoine Vermette netted a slap shot goal to make it 3-2 late in the game, but Dan Cleary salted the game away with an empty netter. Detroit outshot the Blue Jackets 42-29. Every Red Wing had at least one shot in the hockey game. And the final score, Detroit 4 and the Columbus Blue Jackets 2. That's the story from Joe Louis Arena. Now back to you, Michael Patrick, in the studio.
The second-rate Michigan, not second-rate, second-ranked Michigan State Spartans basketball team beat Tennessee Tech yesterday at the Breslin Center, 73-55. That's 2 points short of free tacos. Come on, Sparties, have a heart. It was Sunday. Everyone was sick of turkey. They wanted to go to Taco Bell. The Bears were winners yesterday, beat the Eagles. They're 8-3. They're leading the NFC North. And, boy, Peyton Manning, 4 interceptions yesterday. 2 of them returned for touchdowns. Are the Colts really only 6-5? Chargers beat them yesterday. Auburn is the new #1 team in the BCS standings, and they survived a scare against Alabama. Oregon is #2. TCU is 3rd, followed by Stanford, Wisconsin, Ohio State, Arkansas, Michigan State, Oklahoma, and LSU. Boise State went from 4th to 11th after a loss at Nevada. We can stop hearing about them for a while now, it seems like. The Indiana Hoosiers fired their football coach yesterday, Bill Lynch. Rich Rodriguez, is he going to be fired? Lost to the Ohio State Buckeyes 37-7 this weekend. On the weekend that Michigan State finished their season with only 1 loss by beating Joe Paterno at Penn State. And it looks like the Sparties are going to end up in Alabama, possibly with a game against Nick Saban's Crimson Tide, even though they'd kind of like to be at the Rose Bowl and they'd kind of like to be in a BCS game. Looks like that's how it may shake out. We'll talk with Tim Stout about that later this morning. Is it a little disappointing to you that the Spartans with only 1 loss are just going back to Orlando? Kind of is to me. 888-900-9966. Are the Spartans getting ripped off? Cincinnati's not going to a bowl game. Butch Jones went there from CMU. They had a great season last year. Not so good this year. And high school football winners in the championship games this weekend at Ford Field. Hudson was a winner. Lake Orion was a winner. East Grand Rapids is a champion. West Catholic is a champion. Catholic Central is a winner. Farmington Hills Harrison beats Lowell, and Mount Pleasant beats Saugatuck in the high school football championships. It's Cyber Monday. What does that mean? Well, it's a day that you can shop online. And it's a day that maybe after that holiday weekend of shopping and, hanging out and everything, it's time to relax with a spa treatment. Stephen L. Marvin says that's a pretty good gift to give a woman or a man and something unique that you don't think of. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Michael.
You're having an open house. Is it today to let people know what the Stephen L. Marvin Salon is all about? Where is it, and what's it like?
It's at 1958 Cedar Street, and it's from 10 to 12. And today we're doing complimentary services, mini services, as well as light refreshments, hors d'oeuvres.
So that's in Holt if you're in the Lansing area. Free services. That sounds pretty good if you can sneak away from the office between 10 and 12, and you can get, what, maybe a head and neck massage or a manicure, something like that?
Actually, the time is 12 to 8.
Oh, 12 to 8.
We're doing complimentary hand treatments, skin consultations, makeup applications.
What percentage of your customers are men versus women?
10%.
10% men. We got to get that number up, gentlemen, because it really, I know we all think about sending our wives and mothers and sisters and all that sort of thing to the Stephen L. Marvin Salon, but let me tell you, if you get a good manicure, you know, it helps you in business, doesn't it, Stephen, when people notice that you got decent-looking nails that aren't all chewed up?
We do, actually, and it does. We have a lot of men that actually do come in for manicures and pedicures, as well as their hair, but we'll see our clientele is women.
All right, ladies. If someone wants to shop online today on this Cyber Monday, how do they find the Stephen L. Marvin Salon?
www.stephenlmarvin.com.
StephenLMarvin.com. That's with a V, not a PH, right?
That's correct.
Stephen L. Marvin Salon. You can get gift certificates. You can shop online or go there today between 12 and 8. If you happen to be in the capital area, they have free services. What a nice way to spend your Monday. Maybe after work. Skip happy hour and go to the salon. And remember, if Mama's not happy, nobody's happy. Thank you very much, Mr. Marvin. Next hour, we'll go through some of these WikiLeaks. These are government documents suddenly made public, and some of them are very embarrassing. Stay right there, and you'll hear it from me, Michael Patrick Shields. It's Michael Patrick Shields asking the questions this morning. Is Michigan State getting ripped off in the bowl situation? After all, the Spartans have only one loss, had a terrific year. No Rose Bowl. Wisconsin is probably going. But wait a minute, the Spartans beat Wisconsin. So how come Wisconsin gets to go? BCS ranking. Are they getting ripped off? If they do go back to Orlando to the Capital One Bowl, they might play Alabama and Nick Saban. So that's one consolation. D'Antonio versus Saban would be a lot of fun. Is the United States going to war with North Korea? We talked to Professor Raymond Tanter a little bit earlier. He says pacify North Korea, kick the can down the road, wait them out a little bit. We don't have the resources for yet another war. Are you 30 days away from a tax increase? If President Obama and the federal government doesn't extend the Bush tax cuts by the end of December, you are in for a tax increase. We'll talk about that a little bit later, too. Can they get anything done in the lame duck session? And will Rich Rodriguez be fired as head coach of the Michigan Wolverines? And if he is, after that embarrassing loss to Ohio State on Saturday, will Jim Harbaugh, the guy who played quarterback for the Wolverines at one time and is currently the coach at Stanford, he had a one-loss season, too, be the next Wolverine coach? The other question this morning is that it's Cyber Monday. Can you be fired for shopping online? You see, retail traffic jumped 8.7% over last year's levels during the Thanksgiving shopping blitz. But the fact of the matter is that 77% of shoppers this holiday season will purchase at least one gift card. Gift cards are big. You can buy those online, too, on Cyber Monday. That's the day everybody goes back to work, and the cyber retailers, the online people, have all sorts of specials. 29% of workers say they've holiday shopped online at work, and many of them are planning to do it today. Beware, though, half of all the companies surveyed said they monitor internet and email use by employees. So can you get in trouble for shopping online? Question that we ask this morning to Diana Barros, the founder and editor-in-chief of thebudgetbabe.com. Good morning.
Good morning.
Are you a budget babe?
I certainly am.
And what qualifies you with babe status?
Babe status would have to be thanks to my wonderful makeup artist this morning.
Come on, you got natural beauty, don't you?
Sure. To make my mom proud, I'd say yes.
Okay, good. I like that. Now, you can go to thebudgetbabe.com and check Diana Barros out for yourself. What do you think about this Cyber Monday fad? It's basically that people are going back to work. They're at their computer again after maybe taking the weekend off and deciding to shop at the mall or some of the other retailers. And so they get busy on the keyboard for things they couldn't find, right?
Yeah, definitely. Cyber Monday is kind of the official start to the holiday shopping season online, and it's one of the biggest shopping days of the year, and it's one of the best times to get really amazing deals.
Any suggestions about how you can do that efficiently and carefully, by the way?
My number one tip is to always shop with an online coupon. These are really easy to find. You can do a quick Google search for the name of the merchant and the word coupon. Or you could go directly to a coupon code website. My favorite is called retailmenot.com. And the reason I love this site is it's got thousands of great coupon codes. The codes work, and they can get you things like free shipping, an extra 10, 15, 20% off, or even a free gift.
So it's coupons. That's the secret. And that takes a little bit of extra time, a little bit of hunting around. So be careful if you're at work, because your boss may be looking over your shoulder. And if he's not physically looking over your shoulder, he may be monitoring you from behind the scenes or have a company that does that. Diana Barros is the founder and editor-in-chief of thebudgetbabe.com. Frederick Bart is with us now, too. He's a self-made multimillionaire, and he's authored the book Middle Class to Millionaire. And the foreword of that book is by Donald Trump's vice president. He is probably going to warn people today not to get too carried away with the shopping, because you can get caught up in the excitement of it. And if you want to be a self-made multimillionaire, sometimes you have to watch your pennies, don't you, sir?
Absolutely. But you know what? There's plenty of tips. Today is a great day to be shopping. And there's tips and things we can do so we can accomplish two things. One, we can start saving some money for the future. And two, we can start to fill our holiday gift list.
So what is the secret? There are people saying that how in the world did Frederick Bart become a self-made multimillionaire without investing in the stock market and without buying real estate? I thought those were the two fast paths to riches.
Well, they can be. In fact, they absolutely can be, and they work for many people. But if you don't have the resources to start, or you don't have the interest in either the stock market or in real estate, then you probably should be doing other things. And for me, it was just simple steps, just little things that I was able to do incrementally to propel myself across that seven-figure threshold.
What kind of car do you drive?
Actually, I have a couple different vehicles, but the car I drive most often is just a Ford F-50 pickup.
How many miles on it?
Oh, I don't know, 30,000, 40,000, I would guess by now.
Okay, so that's one way that people, I think, probably spend a lot of useless money is buying fancy new cars, right? When it's just a mode of transportation, that's one way you can save money. In fact, buying a pre-owned vehicle is not a bad idea either. Then you don't take the depreciation. Is that one simple way to do it?
You're exactly right. 76% of all millionaires never buy a new car. They buy a 2-year-old car that still has 70% of the life ahead of it and has already taken a 70% discount. So a 2-year-old vehicle is one way to do it. And certainly another way today. It's Cyber Monday. People will be spending their money. Let's just assume they used one of those coupons. Mm-hmm. And, they were going to buy an item that was on the website previously for $100, but now they have this coupon for 20% off, so they're going to buy this for only $80. My question that I usually ask people in that situation is, hooray for you for using the coupon, but how much money did you save? Mm-hmm. Typically, the answer I would get is $20. I would argue, no, you've spent $80, but if you really want to do something with that $20, I would encourage you immediately to just kind of set that aside. And that's just a small incremental step that I've used for myself to get to where I'm at financially. So we'll take that $20, we'll set it aside. So I want you to separate your savings. Then I literally want you to take that $20 bill and put it off somewhere. And I like to use the analogy that if a child's bank is a piggy bank, then an adult's bank should be an elephant, because we have just that much more to save.
So
put the $20 in that elephant bank, put in another 5, a 10, a 2, just as your savings accumulate, and then you need to snowball the savings. And perhaps that's the biggest key to success, is doing something with the money you've saved. And I don't care if it's as simple as buying United States savings bonds. You just need to start out with something small. In this case, it's $20 savings from Cyber Monday. Sequester it and let it build.
So that's the secret. Salt it away, as you might say in some circles. The point, for instance, too, when you talk about cars, there are some people who say they buy a used pre-owned car instead of a new car. I happen to be driving right now a 2008 Saturn Aura from Cheryl Freeborough at Hyundai Automotive. She sells a lot of pre-owned vehicles of all varieties. So let's say I drive that Saturn. And it's available, by the way, for anyone who wants to buy it and take it away from me, but I'm enjoying it for the moment. But if, let's say you bought that car pre-owned, you paid it off, right? You're used to making payments on a car. Instead of saying, hot dog, I don't have to make that payment anymore, you're already used to it, you've already budgeted for it, you could simply take that payment as long as you're driving that car and keep putting it into savings, eh?
Oh, you're exactly right. In fact, one of the chapters in my book addresses this, and I call that an automobile as an albatross. So your idea of buying in advance, of saving that money for your next car while you're driving your first one, is an absolute tenet towards financial security.
Huh. I like that. I like that, too. And then there were a lot of people last week or 2 weeks ago, they had the smoke out day where they want to quit smoking. Imagine if you took that cigarette money and put it into a savings account every time you wanted to buy a pack or a carton. There are little ways, I guess, you could do that. Online shopping today on Cyber Monday, too. Some of the sites offer free shipping, right, and tax-free shopping in some cases, too, don't they?
Actually, they do, and you need to watch shipping. And this is going to be a big glitch for today. There's two tips that people need to be aware of for Cyber Monday. One is shipping, because a deal that looks too good to be true, in fact, can be wrapped around in exorbitantly high shipping. Oh. The other thing are restocking fees. You know, if we go to a brick-and-mortar retailer and we don't like the item, we expect to be able to return it and get a full credit. Mm-hmm. Not always the case when you're shopping online. Some of the websites, in fact, in their fine print, have as much as a 20% restocking fee. So watch your shipping and watch your restocking fees.
Aha, the devil's in the details, says Frederick Bart. You're a Michigan man, I understand. You live here in the state?
I do, yep, suburban Detroit.
Fantastic. Which city is it?
Sterling Heights.
Sterling? Now, see, there's another thing. I expected a self-made multimillionaire to say Bloomfield Hills or Grosse Pointe. You're in Sterling Heights. You're managing your money very smartly, huh?
Absolutely. Always live below your means.
You'd rather have roses on your table than diamonds on your neck. That's what some people said. Frederick Bart, it's middle class to millionaire. He shows you how you can become a self-made multimillionaire without the stock market and without real estate. Congratulations. We're happy it happened to somebody right here in Michigan, and it's Frederick Bart. Okay, we're finally going to get to those WikiLeaks details coming up in 4 minutes. Stay right there. You won't believe what the U.S. government was involved in. It's Michael Patrick Shields. Monday morning all across the state of Michigan. We never let the birthday of a beautiful woman pass without taking note. Susie Chaffee is 64 today. Remember the Olympic skier? Best remembered as Susie Chapstick from the Chapstick commercials. And Kim Delaney is 49. You would have seen her on NYPD Blue and LA Law and a bunch of other shows, too. She's 49 today. Happy birthday, darlings, to you. Now, I mentioned, we talked earlier with Professor Raymond Tanter, the release of more than 250,000 U.S. Embassy cables through this WikiLeaks program has given away some secret information on American intelligence gathering and political and military strategy. And so it's very embarrassing, some of these revelations. And Professor Raymond Tanter, who was on President Reagan's National Security Council earlier this morning, was talking about these WikiLeaks. One of the, well, I'll give you a few of them here just to titillate you as you drive in this morning to work or take your kids to school. The Saudi king urged Washington to bomb Iran. That was among the details in some of these 250,000 dispatches that were released about U.S. foreign strategy. There were grave fears in Washington and London over the security of Pakistan's nuclear weapons program. They were afraid that government employees in Pakistan could smuggle out enough nuclear material for terrorists to build a bomb. One of the other details, there were inappropriate remarks by Prince Andrew about a UK law enforcement agency and a foreign country. And that showed up in these government documents. Also, allegations that Russia had become a virtual mafia state, that the intelligence agencies were using mafia bosses to carry out criminal operations. Also, these cables contain specific allegations of corruption and harsh criticism by U.S. embassy staff of their host governments, from the Caribbean islands to China and Russia. There's a reference to Vladimir Putin as a, quote, alpha dog, Hamid Karzai as being driven by paranoia, and Germany's Angela Merkel allegedly, quote, avoids risk and is rarely creative. Also, comparisons between Mahmoud Ahmadinejad and Adolf Hitler. The cable names Saudi donors as the biggest financiers of terror groups. And there's a description of a near environmental disaster last year over a rogue shipment of enriched uranium. This is enough to keep you up at night, some of these details. Anyway, that's what's been leaked now, and it's sparking a global diplomatic crisis for the United States. 28 minutes after the hour. Our phone number is 888-900-9966. That's the number to call, 888-900-9966. On this Cyber Monday, people are online. I've already bought something this morning, online shopping. It's true. And I also got a police escort this morning on the way to work. What are you talking about, police escort? I had was driving that Saturn Aura I told you about, and it has, I don't know if that had anything to do with it. It's got the price, because it's available at Freeborough Automotive. It's got the price on the windshield. And maybe they thought it was suspicious that a car coming from a car dealership was driving down Grand River this morning, but that's what was happening. And you know what I mean when you're the only two on the road and the state police trooper is slowing way down so that you can't get past him. I mean, if I went past him, I knew, sure enough, I'd probably get a ticket, right? So I had to slow down. And for like 7 or 8 miles, it was like a pace lap at the Indy 500. He stayed in front of me. I stayed behind him. If there was a green light, he slowed down so that I wouldn't, so that I could pass him. Anyway, thanks for the police escort this morning. I appreciate that very much. And I didn't speed, not one for 1 single second, as far as you know. Larry Adderley is with us. He's a sports broadcaster extraordinaire on television and radio all across the state of Michigan, and we're talking about his beloved Michigan State Spartans this morning. Good morning, Larry.
Thank you, State Police, for being ever alert.
Yeah.
I like that. You could have been driving off with someone's car.
Maybe that was it. I appreciate it. I was. It's Cheryl Freeborough's car, but someone's going to buy it anyway. I mean, but anyway, the Michigan State Spartans now had a fantastic year, one to remember, with only one loss. And why does it feel like we're not getting our due?
Yeah, we're not. But, that's if you put any real stock in the BCS rankings and things like that, then you're foolish, because in the first place, the coaches poll isn't really voted on mostly by coaches. They turn that over to somebody like the sports information director because they're too busy. And they're not looking at other teams across the country. They're looking at the team they're playing next, and they're looking at their team. If you're covering football, you've got to be at the game of the team you're covering, too. So the sports writers really have a narrow view of the overall picture. And then, of course, when you win some close games and get a lot of publicity, like the Notre Dame overtime victory and the Northwestern late victory and the Purdue late victory, I guess some people might tend to look at you and say, well, you're not a very strong team. You're not getting 70, 80 points like Wisconsin is. And that's not true, but that could be a perception.
You can make that case for lots of people. Auburn had a couple of scrapes, and they're the number one team in the nation.
Absolutely. The only one that didn't have tough scrapes, I guess, was Oregon. They just rolled people over. But we did the best we can do. Michigan State can certainly be proud of the year they had. Some writers and people looked at the first 5 games and said, well, they didn't even leave the state of Michigan, and they didn't beat a ranked team. Whoa. Going to Ann Arbor is not a home game for Michigan State.
Yeah.
And at the time, Michigan was unbeaten and ranked. So you got to check your rearview mirror for some of those things.
It's disappointing, too. I mean, we have 3 Big Ten teams in the so-called BCS top 10, and it looks like Wisconsin's going to go to the Rose Bowl when we beat Wisconsin. And what would Bo Schembechler say about that? He'd be upside down.
Yes, he would, and justifiably so. I think you can't discount what happened in that game where we beat them by 10 points and had a solid performance. Among the 3 leaders of the Big Ten, we're 1-0 by beating Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. Wisconsin's 1-1, beating Ohio State but losing to us. Mm-hmm. And Ohio State's 0-1, losing to Wisconsin.
Yeah, and they're ranked ahead of Michigan State to Ohio State.
Yep, but then that's tradition and history and voters voting for the teams they're familiar with, and they're saying, oh, Michigan State bounced up this year, but they're not. They haven't been here for 8 or 10 years, and so we don't,
It's disappointing, too, that Iowa finished only 4-4 in the Big Ten and just demolished the Spartans out there at Iowa City. That was a weird deal.
That had to hurt us in the rankings, too, as Iowa fell from powerhouse to middle-of-the-road team, losing games they shouldn't probably have lost, but had some of the heart taken out of them. What I really enjoyed most yesterday was reading the quote from Tressel, trying to explain the Big Ten and how Michigan is not, the Michigan-Ohio State game is not what it once was because Michigan can't beat them lately.
Yeah.
But he says, the Big Ten evolves. And the quote was, the world changed when we added Penn State. The world changes even more when we add Nebraska. The world changed when Mark D'Antonio went to Michigan State.
Nice.
Yes. And didn't it?
And speaking of Mark D'Antonio, the only consolation is if the Spartans don't go to a BCS game and they get to go to the Capital One Bowl, it looks like he might be able to get a piece of Nick Saban and the Alabama Crimson Tide. That'd be fun, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think it would be. But, of course, Nick has left a couple of schools, so that story's not as dramatic as it once was. But certainly Nick against a former assistant in Mark D'Antonio would be a heck of a story.
Yeah. Now, I know that you were the original host of the Michigan Replay program. You were close to the Wolverine program, too. Yes or no, would you keep Rich Rodriguez if you were David Brandon?
Viewing it from a Michigan State perspective, oh, yes. No, like D'Antonio, he didn't want to get in that argument either. That's, there are decisions and the total reorganization of the Michigan football program is going to take a little time, apparently, to get the kind of athletes that Rich Rod thinks he needs to run his offense and defense.
Well, we shall see. Larry
I
Adderley.
saw a poll that had 68 or 9% in favor of getting rid of him either immediately or immediately after their bowl game.
Yeah, not quite unanimous there in the Wolverine Nation, although maybe if they knew they could get Jim Harbaugh, it would be a different story. Kathy in Lansing, I got 15 seconds for you, madam. What's cooking?
First of all, I want to say I missed you over Thanksgiving, but your replacement was wonderful.
Thank you to Rich Kincaid.
I mean, couldn't possibly measure up, but he did his best.
Kathy always has something sweet to say. Happy Thanksgiving to you, too. And I'm happy to be back here on radio stations all across Michigan and with you on this Monday morning. It's Michael Patrick Shields. These are the Black Eyed Peas. And they're set to perform during halftime of the Super Bowl. In doing so, that group will be bringing back modern pop to the big old Super Bowl, one of the most watched events of the year. See, they kind of been going retro since the Janet Jackson thing, right? They had the Rolling Stones and Prince and who was it last year? I forget. The Who, maybe? Yeah, it was the Who. Black Eyed Peas, though, are going to bring the future back to the Super Bowl 45. That's going to be September 6th at Cowboys Stadium in Arlington, Texas. And their new album is due out tomorrow called The Beginning. Black Eyed Peas are the Super Bowl show. Steve Yensich is on the other end of our line this morning from the Michigan Lodging and Tourism Association. He's the president there and the CEO, and he's saying, let's get started in here, getting some action in the lame duck session in the Michigan State Legislature. However, it doesn't look like very much is going to happen. The Detroit Free Press Bureau Chief Chris Christoph this morning is reporting that the spokesperson for the Senate Majority Leader Mike Bishop, Matt Marsden, is saying, quote, "There's not a lot of good that can come out of lame duck." End quote. He said there are big issues, but they're better off left to the next administration and the new leadership in the House and Senate. End quote. What do you think about that, Steve Yensich?
Well, I tell you what, Michael Patrick, there's no doubt in my mind that there is some good that can come out of this session, and that would be taking one of the supplemental bills that are currently in either chamber and using them as a vehicle to provide that additional funding of $25 million to re-secure the full funding package for the Pure Michigan campaign. In doing so, we're going to solidify, Michigan jobs. We're going to grow tax revenues, and most importantly, we're going to support the upcoming winter season, which is literally just a snowfall or two away. So we believe it's incredibly important, and we think there is something good that can happen.
Going to have a little press event today to sort of try to raise awareness?
Yes, we are. We're going to have Ken Hayward from Grand Hotel and Steve Kirshner from Shanty Creek and Andy Deloney from the Restaurant Association, a number of folks coming in from Lansing even as we speak. Bob Curis from Homestead and Glen Arbor, and, of course, Bob Pierce from Dearborn Inn in Dearborn, obviously. But, it's important because that's a pretty good representative cross-section of all the different tourism segments that will be impacted either negatively if the Senate and House refuse to act, or positively if we do the right thing and provide that funding to promote this great destination we call Michigan.
Is there anybody listening is the question.
You know what? I think there's been a long-standing bipartisan support level in both chambers. The key is, what will the legislative leaders do? Will they listen to their caucus members? Will they turn them loose to provide the support that we believe has been there for many years? I mean, over the course of the last 4 or 5 years, Michael Patrick, we've seen a total of $55 million in funding provided for Pure Michigan. And the sad fact is, just a little over a year ago, we had $30 million, which placed us sixth nationwide. And we saw tremendous increases in tourism outcomes. The regional outcome in long-standing markets like Indianapolis, Chicago, and Ohio and whatnot, that jumped from about $2.86 to a high of $5.34 in new sales tax revenues that otherwise would never be received. So I think there are people listening, and we're confident we're going to make it happen.
And that money could come, the money that would be used for the Pure Michigan campaign, from a $100 million surplus we ended up with. Is that true?
That's one option. And that's certainly, to me, the one that probably is the easiest to support. There's been a proposal out there for a car rental assessment that would be taken to the airport locations, pretty much ensuring that only people from other states would be contributing to that fund. That's something we could support. There's also been a discussion of reallocating roughly $25 million from the 21st Century Jobs Fund. And quite frankly, it's not our job to figure out how. We know that we have 3 menu options, any of which we can support.
I wonder, would there ever be a situation where we could check off one of those boxes on our tax form to allocate X money to the Pure Michigan campaign? Is that something that we've either done or worked on?
Well, we've looked at that, and unfortunately, not all that many folks check that kind of a box.
Oh.
And even if every state resident did, it only would raise somewhere around $8 to $9 million.
Okay.
So that would keep us well short of the mark.
Who needs to act today? Who needs to be your champion in the state legislature to make this happen?
I think it's very clearly in the hands of Speaker Dillon, of Senate Majority Leader Mike Bishop, and their respective chamber leadership teams. Priorities, things automatically happen if we assign them a high enough priority. And we're asking and urging legislative leaders to act on this package to ensure that the winter campaign goes on. If we wait until January, February, March of next year, obviously we've lost the opportunity to market that winter campaign, and we may not be able to pass a package quickly enough to secure funding the all-important summer season.
Ooh, I hate to hear that. Let's see what happens, Steve Yensich. I'm sure you will let us know. Michigan Lodging and Tourism Association. Thank you for the time this morning. It's Michael Patrick Shields all across Michigan. And when we get back, are the Spartans being ripped off? And did you hear what Sarah Palin said? Another gaffe from a politician. Stay tuned for that. It's Michael Patrick Shields. We talked with Stacy Beeler from Meijer just a minute ago, reminding everybody that even though it's Cyber Monday, and maybe you spent some time at Meijer on Black Friday or over the weekend, you can shop at Meijer online. Don't forget, Meijer expects to double its sales volume in 2010 over 2009. Online sales, very important to them. So if you want to shop Meijer, you can do it from your office or your home or your car or whatever. Just a little friendly reminder for you there. I wanted to remind you, too, some sad news that Leslie Nielsen has passed away. He was a Canadian-born. He had pneumonia. He was living in Fort Lauderdale, 84 years old. And best known, although he was a serious actor at one stage, he's probably best known for the funny bits he did in movies like The Naked Gun. I think they had a couple of those, and Airplane, and that sort of thing. So we mourn the passing of a very funny man, Leslie Nielsen, who had a very dry sense of humor, and here's a little example of that.
The stewardess said both pilots.
Can you fly this plane and land it?
There he is.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
That's Leslie Nielsen. Maybe his most famous line of all. I am serious. And don't call me Shirley. The Simpsons were making fun of Detroit and the Lions yesterday, too. That long-running. If I'm not mistaken, The Simpsons is the longest-running television series going right now. It's a cartoon. Here's what they said about our dear Detroit Lions and our dear city of Detroit.
Hey, Homer, you ever think about racing that bird?
You can race pigeons?
Hey, if it moves, you can bet on it.
What about the Detroit Lions?
Nah, lay off Detroit. Them people is living in Mad Max times.
Rich Kincaid, the immediate past president of the Detroit Sports Broadcasters. What do you make of that?
Wow. I've seen Mad Max. I would say it's not quite that bad down here, but at any rate, it's, it's tough to be a laughing stock, isn't it?
Yeah, the city and the team. And it leads me to my next point. First of all, I got a lot of nice comments from people who enjoyed your guest hosting for me last week, and I want to thank you for that very much.
Oh, thank you for giving me the opportunity. I had a great time.
Terrific. And I want you to know that I was watching the Lions game from a balcony at the Waikoloa Hilton at 7:30 in the morning, Big Island time, with one eye on the ocean and the other eye on the Lions game.
Well, at least the Lions didn't keep you occupied for too long. You know, they were in that ball game. Well, obviously they were leading into the third quarter, but the turning point in that game came early in the third quarter. The Lions, with the lead, really were outplaying New England, and they forced them into a 3-and-out on New England's first possession of the second half, and then the Lions, the first time they got the ball in the second half, Sean Hill made his first mistake of the day. It was a beaut. He threw an interception, and all of a sudden New England was in business of the Detroit 26, and they took them 4 plays to score the touchdown, and then they just dominated Detroit, outscored them 35-7 in the second half. And boy, for a while there, it was looking like it might be a fun day for the Lions, but that 2-9. And you know what's really annoying here, Michael Patrick? The BCS standings. I paid close attention to this all weekend long when Boise State was defeated, Louisiana State lost, and Oklahoma State lost, 3 teams that were ahead of Michigan State. I did the math, and Michigan State was ranked 10th. I said they'll leapfrog past those 3 teams, and they'll wind up in 7th place. And there's 8 BCS berths available, right? So that should put Michigan State in pretty good shape. I had not counted on Arkansas leapfrogging Michigan State, going from 12th place to 7th place, and leaving MSU in the 8th position. I don't quite see the logic of that one.
Yeah, we're all talking here about how the Spartans are getting ripped off, and the only saving grace would be if, in fact, Mark D'Antonio gets to go up against Nick Saban in the Capital One Bowl. That would at least be, something intriguing. Let me ask you this about the Lions, though. I talked to Jim Nantz. He was in for the game, and he said that he thinks the Lions are very close to turning the corner. How long can we keep hearing that before we start to see it on the scoreboard?
When the season started, I really thought the Lions had a legitimate shot at being a 500 football team. I mean, it sounds kind of silly now. I even thought with a break or two they might be able to go 9-7. And the reason I thought that was Nadekam Suh, the first-round draft choice, the defensive lineman, who had, it takes two guys to block him. And I thought with him and Kyle Vanden Bosch, the Lions would be able to put pressure on the opposing quarterback this year, which would make up for some of the deficiencies in the Detroit secondary. Suh's come through. He's got 8 sacks already. He's already set a new Lions rookie record for sacks. But that secondary still gets burned by the long ball. Happened against New England. It's happened a number of times this year. Happened against Philadelphia that I can think of off the top of my head, where they give up a 75 or 80-yard pass at the most inopportune of times. And then the injury to Matthew Stafford is the other thing that's really killed Detroit this year, and I blame the coaches for that, because in the game in which Stafford was originally hurt, the season opener against Chicago, they had Chicago in the offseason signed Julian Peppers for $90 million to do one thing: destroy the opposing team's quarterback, and the Lions let him do it because on a play where Chicago was rushing 4 and Detroit was blocking 5, Peppers was not double teamed. They let him go one-on-one against Jeff Backus, the left tackle, when he came in, got stabbed from the blind side, and ruined his season, and ruined the Lions' season in the process. And I just didn't understand why they didn't have a tight end to help Backus, or at the minimum have somebody in the backfield, a running back, just to chip Peppers so he doesn't get a clean shot at quarterback.
The question's going to remain now for the Lions again through the offseason. Rich Kincaid, veteran sports writer. It's Michael Patrick Shields. Back right after the news. Stay with us.
Adios and vaya con Dios. A long way